Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Kråkan, so welcome to Classy Movie Rambles, where I talk about all movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is Total Recall from 2012, and it's a science fiction movie that's about 1 hour and 58 minutes long. And the movie starts with a narration about how the world has gone bad, and it's more or less uninhabitable. And then cutting to the main character in a pool of his own blood, and he wakes up and he fights robots, and he's supposed to flee them, and he has to let go of his girlfriend down a hatch, or supposedly girlfriend, and then he wakes up in the bed with his wife, and he tries to explain to his wife what's happening about his nightmares and all, but he doesn't have time to explain that much, but she has to go to work. It's an emergency. She works as a paramedic. And later, this is, by the way, Douglas Quaid, that's his name, the main character's name, and he has to go to work, and by going to work, there's this big elevator called the Fall that goes through the planet core, because there are two places you can be. It's like the colony and I think on the British side, and the other side is like Australia or something. So he has to go to work in this robotic factory, and goes with his work buddy Harry. So what happens is that he talked to his friend Harry about recall and all these kind of how to implant memories in your brain, like vacations and stuff that you want to do. But Harry kind of says this just bullshit, basically. And then Douglas gets called into the office for something, and I think I kind of blanked out at this part because I don't really know what they talked about. Either he get a promotion or it was something bad, but it doesn't matter. So afterwards, he goes out with a beer with Harry at this bar, and they talk more about recall. And even later, he goes to recall himself, Douglas, and he gets into a machine to get new memories and everything. And he shows instead of a vacation or something, he shows do you want to be a secret agent? And he says, yeah, sure, that sounds interesting, like memories of that in the past, like. And then as he sits in the machine, something goes wrong, and the program doesn't load because something is wrong with his memories, which we'll be talking a little later in the review or the ramble. And all of a sudden, the whole building is stormed by federal police, and they start shooting, and something kicks in Douglas's mind, and he starts to fight back. And all of a sudden, he just goes by muscle memory, so something is obviously weird about this whole situation. And he takes out about 10 guys, and then he runs away from the scene. And he gets home to his wife, and he tells her about what he actually had taken out like 10 guys, and she strangles him, and he doesn't know what's happening, and she starts opening fire, and he reacts instinctively, and she explains that basically this is just there was like a failsafe or something, because he's not who he thinks he is. And this weird fight, and he fights his wife, which isn't really his wife, and forward and backward, and he is forced to flee his apartment, basically. And while Douglas is on the run, he gets a phone call, and it's a phone embedded in his hand, the palm of his hand, and he answers it, and a guy tells him to put his hand up to a piece of glass, and there's becomes like a display of the face of a man. And Douglas kind of asks him what's happening and everything, but the man kind of tells him to get the key, and he gets an address, and he has to cut out the phone out of his palm with a piece of glass, because it can be traced. He's smart enough to realize that. So Douglas walks into a bank. That's what the address was for. So he gets into a bank, and he gets into a deposit, and he gets guns and passports and some electronic device that will become important later in the script. And he gets a new address by himself. And there's this secure message that kind of explains a bit about where he can find he basically tells himself in the message where he can find his old apartment. So what happens is he runs from the police or something, and he ends up on the freeway in a hover car that is tied to it's basically a hover car. And there's a car chase, and he's picked up by the girl from his dreams. And they drive down the lane, and he basically gets into a magnetic field kind of track car that runs on magnets. And then there's this wild chase, and the car kind of crashes to the ground, and he's forced to carry this unconscious girl from his dreams into his old apartment. And he goes into the apartment. He looks for clues and stuff, information about everything, and he finds more guns and stuff. And he finds a piano. And the funny thing, he really wanted to know how to play the piano, but he never learned it. So he sits down and he starts to play, and he realizes that he can actually play the piano. And when he plays the song from his memory that he really doesn't remember him, that he knows, he actually struck a key, and he realized that that's the key. So he gets another message explaining to him that his real name is Carl Hauser, and they kind of changed his memory because there was something. He used to work for another guy in an organization. This all a bit fuzzy, but there's some information in his brain or something, and he doesn't really know. So he just want to find out what happened. So the girl wakes up, and they talk a little bit what happened, and he doesn't really remember her, but he knows that he is important to her somehow. And then as they leave the building, the federal police shows up and more robots, and Harry, his friend from work, is trying to talk him down and basically telling him that he's back at recall, and he's sitting in his chair and everything, that he's been all delusional. And there's this kind of conversation between the girl, Harry, and Douglas, or Hauser, whatever you call him at this point. And he's kind of confused, but he has to shoot Harry, and he has to run basically. And then Douglas is forced to fight his ex-wife at this point. And they go into an elevator shaft, and there's a lot of fighting inside and outside of the elevator, and there is some explosions, and they barely escaped, him and his real wife, Rachel, the girl from his dreams, basically. And then Rachel tells him that they have to find the resistance leader, Matthias, to get some more information and extract it out of his head, basically. So they go to the subway, or the undercity of the metro system, where no one goes basically because it's radiated and stuff. And then he meets Matthias, and they talk, and he explains to Douglas that he is also Hauser and all that. He gets some information, and they try to go into his mind with this machine, but Cohagen, the main bad guy, has rigged it up. So basically Douglas's mind works as a tracking device. So what happens is that the bad guys storm the building, and Cohagen is there, and he kills off Matthias, and then they take the others captured. But then what happens is the guy that was on the phone with him earlier in the movie shows up, and he basically frees him, one of his hands from his restraints, and he takes all the guys out. And then he takes a chopper and a bunch of explosives, and he flies back to the fall, because Cohagen is planning to invade the other side, the colony basically. So he gets on the fall with his chopper and everything, and he tries to rescue Rachel, and he puts up a timer for the explosive for 15 minutes. And as they escape, they get kind of ambushed. And one other thing about going through the core, the gravity kind of shifts. So at the middle part, due to maintain the speed, the gravity shift, and the gravity shift basically means that it's a weightless session. So he uses the gun to repel himself through the air, like shooting bullets at the other guys, and they were not prepped for it. So he goes up topside, and basically that's the whole point. He gets up topside, and then they are on the other side of the fall, basically. And then Rachel and Douglas get captured again, but Rachel escapes, and Cohagen and Douglas fight it out. They duke it out, and Rachel fires it's like a chopper railgun at him. And what happens is Douglas basically knocks Cohagen out, and the fall breaks apart because of the explosion, and Rachel and Douglas jump off the exploding the fall, basically the elevator thingy through the planet's core. And Cohagen dies, and Douglas wakes up in an ambulance with his supposed wife, but it isn't his wife. It's Tori with his ex-wife, basically, with a device that makes him look like his wife. So he shoots her out of the ambulance, and that's the end of that. And his real wife, Rachel, comes out and greets him, and that's the end of the movie. So if it seems like I'm summarizing crudely and all that, it's not. I just looked through the movie. I made notes of important things that happen. It's not a very holdover script, but whatever. What do I think about Total Recall from 2012? It's an action movie, that's made a good job. It has a lot of good effects for what it is, and if you compare it to the original Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think it's kind of a different animal altogether because of all the special effects back then were kind of practical, very little CG and stuff. But this has CG all over it because it's like one of those. Well, it's cheaper to make it with visuals and stuff. So I don't really know if I can recommend this movie or not. I mean, probably just watch the original one because it's a little cheesy and stuff, and this is just a little bit too serious. Not that many jokes and stuff, I guess. So I don't know. Watch the original, not this one. So anyway, thanks for listening and or watching, and take care.